You're not suffering for no reason, and you're not lost, like they say. You're being called, but no one ever taught you how to hear this kind of call, because it doesn't come with promises. It comes with pain. Pain that tightens, suffocates, insists. Pain you try to quiet with routine, distraction, quick spirituality. But it stays, because it has something to show you. Carl Jung knew this. He knew pain isn't the enemy, it's the messenger. It arrives when you stray too far from your center, when you forget who you are just to become what they expect. And the more you try to silence it, the louder your soul screams. This isn't about comforting you, it's about reminding you who you were before you got lost trying to be accepted. What do you feel when all the noise disappears, when the routine, the goals, the masks finally fall silent? If what's left is silence, be careful. You might be face to face with what you've avoided your whole life, the void. But not just any void, the void that whispers. And it whispers truths you don't want to hear, that your life is full but soulless, that you've collected achievements but lost yourself. Jung called this the rupture from the false self, the collapse of the fantasies your ego created to protect you from what you never had the courage to feel. This kind of void isn't lack. It's a memory of what was forgotten. It's your soul kicking the door, tired of waiting for you to finally look within. And that's why it hurts. It hurts because it exposes the lie. It hurts because it breaks the performance wide open. It hurts because it reveals that the success you worked so hard for never filled you. And it never will. You can change jobs, cities, even faces, but the void follows. Because it doesn't come from outside. It comes from the center. And the center is the place you've avoided most. The cruelest part, the void doesn't scream, it waits. It waits for you to get tired of the chase. It waits for you to collapse from pretending. It waits for you to break enough to finally start listening. Listening to the suffering that surrounds you might just be the next messenger on this path, because when the void whispers, it doesn't want to destroy you. It wants to return you. And if you listen with your soul, you'll realize the pain that follows is only the beginning. Pain is not punishment, it's a message. And the problem is, you've spent your whole life trying to return it to sender, numbing it, rationalizing it, spiritualizing it. But what you call pain might actually be the self trying to reach you. Jung knew that suffering is the force that pulls us out of the surface. He said, neurosis is always the suffering of a soul that has not discovered its meaning. What hurts you is not here to punish you. It's calling you. Pain is the one messenger you can't ignore for too long without consequences. And you know what it screams behind the symptoms? You're not living your truth. That's it. Simple and brutal. Constant anxiety, emotional burnout, that silent discontent. They're not flaws. They're alarms. You've tried everything except looking at what really hurts. Because facing it means letting go of the stories, the justifications, the illusion that everything's under control. It's not, and that's okay. Pain only hits you with full force when you've stayed away from your soul for too long. It shows up as a last resort. And if it's showing up now, it means you've waited too long to listen. Here's the final blow. Pain doesn't want you to defeat it. It wants you to translate it. And for that, you'll have to stop fighting it like it's your enemy. You'll have to descend. Be still. Sit with it. Ask what it's trying to say. Because behind every breakdown, there's a truth trying to be born. And those who run from pain run from themselves. But those who listen begin to see. And once you begin to see, you'll realize that what hurt the most was only the start of what could heal you the most. Being normal has become a survival standard, but no one told you the cost. The price of belonging to the world is often to stop belonging to yourself. Jung warned us, the more you try to fit in, the more you disconnect from who you are. And the worst part, the normal you idolize is sick. Anxious people, numbed out, overworked, smiling on the outside and screaming on the inside, but still functioning. That's what they call a normal life. But this normal isn't balance. It's spiritual amnesia. You learn to silence your deepest questions so you wouldn't seem weird, to settle for soulless relationships, empty jobs, shallow conversations, just to appear well-adjusted. But adjusting to what makes you sick isn't maturity. It's fear. It's trauma. It's the shadow trying to keep the illusion of control. And here's the trap. The more you adapt to what has no soul, the further you stray from your calling. The unconscious starts to collapse inside you until one day the breakdown arrives as your only chance at healing. The cruelest part. This normal life was designed to keep you too busy to notice you're disappearing. You call it routine, but it's a cage. You call it stability, but it's stagnation. And if you keep trying to look stable in a system that profits from your disconnection, you'll get sick in silence. But eventually, even distraction stops working. Not even money, sex, or your phone can numb the call anymore. And that's when life starts asking you, without words, is this life really yours? Have you ever stopped to ask yourself whose life you're actually living? Because maybe it's not yours. Maybe you're just repeating inherited choices, other people's expectations, handed down beliefs. Maybe you've been acting out a script written for you before you even learned how to say no. Jung called this psychic alienation. When you become so removed from yourself that you stop being a person and start becoming a reflection. And reflections, they please, they look good, but they're hollow. You know that discomfort you feel even when everything on the outside seems fine? That sense that something's out of place, even with the job, the affection, the stability. That's your soul knocking. It's the unconscious saying, this life isn't yours. You followed the script. You did what they told you, but the reward wasn't fulfillment. It was exhaustion. Because living without belonging to yourself is the quietest kind of collapse. You don't scream, but you withdraw. You don't cry, but you get sick. You don't quit, but you shut down. And so you go on, functioning, but soulless. Living a life that isn't yours is a slow form of dying. And the cruelest part, the world applauds your performance, your obedience, your adaptation. But inside, you already know, you already feel it already hurts. And then your body starts to scream what your spirit never had the space to say. And when that happens, you can't push it down anymore. The structure begins to crack. And that moment, the one many call collapse, might just be the first step home. Collapse isn't an accident. It's built in silence, brick by brick. Expectation by expectation, repression by repression, until one day, it all comes down. Most people think they collapsed because something went wrong, but that's not it. You collapsed because you spent too long pretending everything was right. Jung knew the unconscious doesn't tolerate lies forever. It waits. It watches, and when you cross the threshold of internal disconnection, it erupts. And when that happens, it's not the world that's falling apart. It's the false structure you built. That structure is made of silent deals. I'll hide my pain if you give me love. I'll silence my truth if you let me belong. But those deals come at a cost, because you start building a life around things that aren't yours. And when the unconscious realizes that this life doesn't feed the soul, it collects the debt through anxiety, insomnia, existential crisis, illness, breakdowns. Medicine tries to silence the symptoms. Society tries to normalize them. But the self starts to scream. Here's a hard truth. Collapse, as devastating as it feels, is actually an act of clarity by the psyche. It's the moment when the ego can no longer uphold the illusion. When the shadow can no longer be locked in the basement, when the void overflows, But it's not the end. It's the beginning of something no one teaches. The return to who you were before you lost yourself trying to please the world. And that return begins when the call to individuation becomes too loud to ignore. There comes a time when you can't fake it anymore. The void grows, the mask gets heavier, the light fades, even if everything looks fine on the outside. That's when the call to individuation breaks in like a scream from the soul. It's not subtle, it's not pretty, it's not up for negotiation. It crashes through you, and you feel it. Either you listen now, or you self-destruct later. Jung described this process as the most brutal and most liberating journey of human life. Because individuation doesn't turn you into some enlightened being, it destroys you first. It strips away everything that isn't really you, without warning. Without anesthesia, you'll lose friends, you'll disappoint family, you'll distance yourself from everything that upheld your false identity. You'll feel like you're going backward, like you're going crazy. But that's exactly where sanity begins, because individuation isn't about becoming special. It's about shedding everything you built just to survive. It crushes the ego, exposes the shadow, dissolves the persona. And what's left? You. Raw, real, wild, untamed. And this version of you, the one that's been buried for so long, starts to rise. But for it to rise, everything that kept you small must fall. You'll want to quit. You'll beg to go back to comfort. You'll try to bargain with fate, but it's too late. The call has already been made, and once you've heard it, you can never again shrink into your old hiding places. Individuation is a sacred wound, and bleeding is part of it, because in that blood, your truth is born. You can't meditate your way past it. You can't skip steps. You can't outsource it. Either you walk through it, or you break. And in the middle of that crossing, a new figure appears, the shadow. But what no one tells you is, it was never against you. Everything you hide ends up ruling you. Everything you reject ends up controlling you. Everything you silence eventually screams. That's the logic of the shadow. It's not the monster you were taught to fear. It's the lost fragment of who you truly are. Jung said that individuation requires facing your shadow, not to defeat it, but to reclaim it. And that takes a rare kind of courage. The courage to look in the mirror and not look away. The shadow is the part of your soul that was exiled so you could be accepted. It's the price you paid to survive. But survival is expensive. You buried your anger, your sensuality, your jealousy, your selfishness, your vulnerability, your rage, your independence. Everything they told you was ugly or wrong, you locked it away. But what's locked up rots. And as it rots, it poisons. The shadow doesn't vanish just because you pretend it's not there. It shows up in the toxic relationship you can't let go of, in the emptiness no achievement can fill, in the irrational fear that freezes you out of nowhere. And all of it, every bit of that inner chaos, is just the shadow asking to be heard, not to take revenge, but to set you free. Here's the twist. Once recognized, the shadow becomes a guide, because it knows exactly where you hid your power. It holds the key to your wholeness, but to let it guide you, you'll have to go down, you'll have to face it. You'll have to sit in the dark and ask, what do you want to show me? Don't expect a mystical answer, expect real discomfort. Because it's through that discomfort that the unconscious speaks, and quietly it starts leading you home, even when you swear you're still lost. You think you're in control, but you're not. Your decisions, your desires, your reactions, they may all be shaped by things you don't even know exist. The unconscious doesn't ask permission. It molds, directs, sabotages, attracts. And until you go down into it, you'll keep living a life that feels like yours, but was actually shaped by trauma, repetition, fear, and unresolved lineage. Jung knew The unconscious isn't the opposite of consciousness. It's the soil from which it grows. And if you don't know that soil, you'll get lost on the surface. The brutal truth, most of what you're living, you didn't choose. You inherited it, internalized it, automated it. You repeat patterns of attachment without noticing. You're drawn to people who reflect old wounds. You work in places that punish your freedom because deep down you still believe you need to pay for what you feel. The unconscious isn't just psychological, it's spiritual. It holds the raw content of the soul, everything you haven't yet had the courage to face, and it doesn't want to punish you, it wants to return you. But to do that, it'll drag you into chaos, because chaos is the shortest road between the lie and the truth. And that's when everything shifts, when you realize the unconscious isn't sabotaging you, it's guiding you. Every breakdown, every painful pattern, every mistake has a hidden purpose, to reconnect you with what was lost. But that only reveals itself to those who listen. Listening to the unconscious isn't about interpreting pretty dreams, it's about feeling the discomfort, honoring your intuition, and following signs that don't make sense, but are full of soul. And at that point in the journey, something huge shows up, fear. But not just any fear, the fear of change, the fear that guards the gates of transformation. It's not pain that paralyzes you, it's the fear of the change that pain demands. Have you noticed? You can handle the suffering, but changing, that feels impossible. That's because fear is the final gatekeeper before transformation. It's the monster at the castle door. It growls, it roars, it threatens, but it doesn't bite. Jung understood. Fear is the reflection of the part of you that still believes it'll die if you become whole. And in a way, it will. But only the persona will die. The fear of change isn't cowardice, it's attachment. Attachment to what you know. Even if it's killing you, you cling to the pain you've already memorized, the emptiness you're used to, the suffering that became home. Because the unknown is terrifying. Becoming who you truly are means giving up everything you used to be for acceptance. It means disappointing people, cutting ties, losing comfort. And that's terrifying. But listen, fear only shows up when something real is about to happen. If it didn't hurt, it wouldn't matter. Fear doesn't show up to stop you. It shows up to test you. And here's the secret few understand. Fear isn't the end of the path. It's the beginning of the crossing. It guards the gates of transformation so that only the ready may enter. And once you pass through, something in you will break. But it's not your essence. It's your prison. Fear is the final shadow before the fire. And if you walk through it, without running, without numbing, without trying to control, on the other side, something begins to rise. Something that no longer depends on anyone's approval. Something only the awakened can carry. Awakening doesn't feel like peace. It feels like breaking, because real peace doesn't come before the fall. It's born after the impact. Jung already said it. You don't become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by becoming conscious of the darkness. Awakening doesn't come with soft music and candles. It comes with screams, with loss, with silence, with breakdowns. It comes when everything that defined you collapses, and you finally realize you were living asleep. Awakening is sacred violence. It shatters everything that wasn't you. That's why so few awaken for real. Most people would rather daydream about spirituality than walk through their own hell. Because true awakening isn't pretty, it's lonely, it's wild, it's irreversible. You won't come out of it smiling, you'll come out raw, because now you feel, now you listen, now you see, and seeing hurts. Seeing everything you denied, repressed, tolerated, as if it were normal. But awakening didn't come to comfort you. It came to free you, and freedom, at first, is terrifying. Because there are no more crutches, just ground. And this new ground It's rough, but it's real, and it's where you'll have to learn to walk again, without personas, without masks, without hiding. Awakening is a radical promise. If you have the courage to cross the darkness, you'll discover that the center of your being was never absence. It was forgotten strength. And now that you've heard the call, you can't pretend to be deaf again. The soul doesn't allow retreat, and what it's asked of you so far was only the beginning. So now what? What will you do with the pain you heard? Will you silence it again? Will you run, like you always did? Or will you, for the first time, sit with it and listen? Because that pain doesn't want to destroy you. It wants to return you. It wants you to remember. Remember who you were before you pretended. How many more times will you repeat the same escape and expect a different result? The soul has already called. The collapse already happened. The void already pointed the way. Now it's you, just you, with courage or fear, but whole. And if something ripped open inside you, write. Sometimes a single comment is the first cut that leads you back to the soul. And if you want to keep coming back, subscribe to the channel. Here, you might not be understood, but you will be seen.